Now, the relative absorption of the sodium ion. The relative absorption of the sodium ion from the PCT, there is 60 to 70% of the absorption of the sodium. Why I am talking about the absorption of the sodium, not talking about the another salt like potassium and others? Because sodium, it is the main ion which we need to control for the maintenance of the blood pressure, because the main or the prime action of the diuretic drug is to maintain the BP. So for the maintenance of the BP, for the most important ion will be required is sodium. Therefore we are talking about the sodium ion more. The normal serum level will be approx 142 milli equivalent per liter, okay, and 142, and sodium reabsorption from the certain site, PCT, there will be 60 to 70% reabsorption of the sodium ion. And then the loop of Henle will contribute 20 to 25% of reabsorption, and DCT, distal convolute tubule, will contribute 8 to 9%, and the collecting duct will contribute 2 to 3%. This we need to understand, because for the maintenance of the electrolyte balance we need only fine tuning. Means we need to adjust these DCT at the level of the DCT or at the level of the collecting duct. Okay, we need only the fine tuning of maintenance of the sodium ion or sodium electrolyte concentration. So this is the about the salt reabsorption or sodium reabsorption. And then the site and mechanism of action. I was talking about the diuretic in very proper or very systematic manner. First I have talked about the here the definition of, and after the definition I have talk about the urinary physiology, about the urinary formation, very basic about the urinary formation. And then about the urinary formation, then I have talked about the various part of the nephron, okay, various part of the nephron, PCT, DCT and all. And then the salt reabsorption, then the site of action and mechanism of action. I am talking about the site and mechanism of action. First there will be PCT, at the site of the PCT, which means the site of the action of the diuretics and mechanism of action of diuretics. So site of action of diuretics, first site will be PCT. At the level of the PCT, the name of that diuretics will be diuretic drugs, or the class of carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. One name will be, you can write acetazolamide. There will be many: acetazolamide, brinzolamide, dorzolamide, and there will be many drugs. There are amide or sulfonamide derivative, okay. And then another diuretic which I have not talked at is act at the level of the PCT as well as the loop of Henle, is called osmotic diuretic. What does the osmotic diuretic do? First I have to talk about this. Let us suppose this is the this is our circulation, green part. This is our circulation. In, let us suppose we inject a substance which is named as mannitol. Mannitol is a inert low molecular weight substance and highly osmotically active. Osmotically active means which have highly concentrated or highly soluted part. Okay, highly concentrated, which means osmotically active, which is the highly osmotically active. And in the highly osmotically active, what happen? It will filter towards from the glomerulus, and from the glomerulus it will be filtered and comes in the nephron. And the nephron, let us suppose here it will come the mannitol. What does it do? It will secrete, or it will secrete the water here. Why it will secrete? Because it is concentrated, which means the solute content is more and the solvent content is less. Let us suppose solvent will be water. So we know that the things will move from the higher concentration to lower concentration. So the solute will be high concentration. It tend to move from the lumen inside the basolateral side, luminal side to basolateral side, but it will not move because it is inert and it will be reabsorbed very less. So we assume it as negligible, okay. And then the solvent will be less in the mannitol, then solvent content will be less, then there will be movement of the water from the basolateral side to the luminal side. So there will be pulling of water, okay, if we give this mannitol, then there will be pulling of water, then water will move all the way around towards the nephron lumen and will be excreted into the kidney via the passage of the urine. So there will be the another mechanism of the mannitol which acting as a osmotically active substance. It help in the diuresis. Okay, so it will act at the level the PCT and at the level of the loop of Henle. So they are known as the osmotic diuretics. Name is mannitol. Mannitol is the most important one. Okay, it is a low molecular weight inert substance. And then loop diuretics. Loop diuretics are the diuretics which will act at this level. This is sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. Sodium, which I have already understand previously. Sodium potassium 2 chloride. It is something about it. It is a membrane. It is a protein which is a 12 pass membrane, which is a 12 pass membrane domains. Okay, 12 pass membrane means which means it have certain domain which is 12 domain. So named as 12 pass membrane domain protein, which is sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. Okay, so this is the loop diuretics. Loop diuretics are the group of the drugs. Loop diuretics are the literally are the group of the drug which will inhibit this sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter at the level of the thick ascending limb TAL. Okay, and then the thiazide diuretics. Okay, thiazide diuretics. In the thiazide diuretic, the site of action will be cortical TAL, which means the cortical thick ascending limb, and early DCT. Cortical thick ascending limb will be this this part, which means the ending of the cortical TAL and the early part of the DCT. Okay, then they will act. They are called thiazide diuretics. Okay, they will inhibit this sodium chloride co-transporter or symporter. Sodium chloride will be inhibited, then sodium chloride will find another way to move. It's a way to pass into the urine. Okay, then there will be diuresis occur. Okay, this is the about thiazide diuretics. And another group of diuretics is potassium sparing diuretics. The potassium sparing diuretics, this is the potassium sparing diuretic. In the potassium sparing diuretic, I have already told you one will be one will inhibit the aldosterone receptor, or okay, and another will inhibit the ENAC channel, epithelial sodium channel. Okay, and the site will be late DCT and CD. Okay, late DCT and CD, which I have already told you. This is the site. This is the site where it act. Okay, let me zoom in. This is the site where the aldosterone receptor act, where the aldosterone have to bind. It will remove the aldosterone. It will bind here the potassium sparing diuretics, which is the aldosterone receptor inhibitor. And another one will be ENAC inhibitor. This is black. This black transporter is ENAC channel, epithelial sodium channel. So this is the mechanism of the potassium sparing diuretic. Two mechanisms. First is it is acting via the side of the blood, basal side. Another one is acting via the luminal side. Okay, and then I have already told you potassium sparing. And then there is a note I have written here. All diuretics cause hypokalemia, means all diuretics which can cause hypokalemia, and except potassium sparing. Why potassium sparing not cause hypokalemia? All diuretics causing hypokalemia except potassium sparing. Let us understand. Let us suppose this is a diuretic. Let us suppose this sodium potassium 2 chloride inhibitor. I have injected, or I have taken oral drug orally. Then it will move toward the general circulation. General circulation will be filtered. Then it will move all the way and it will inhibit sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. Okay, then sodium potassium 2 chloride will not be absorbed, and sodium potassium 2 chloride will come here. Let us suppose potassium will come here. Then potassium will be excreted into the urine. So there will be loss of potassium into the urine. Then in the blood there will be the hypokalemia. Okay, in the blood there will be hypokalemia. Okay, and all the transporter, whether it will be the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, or it will be sodium chloride co-transporter inhibitor, that is thiazide diuretics, or the potassium is or the any diuretics except the potassium sparing diuretic will lead to the hypokalemia. Why potassium sparing diuretic not lead to the hypokalemia? Let us understand. Let me zoom in. Okay, then what happened? This potassium sparing diuretics, what does it do? And again there is a mechanism which I have told you twice. Let us suppose there will be aldosterone receptor inhibitor. This is the receptor of aldosterone. This will be inhibited, this will be inhibited. Then further process of the nucleus, from the nucleus there will be formation of the mRNA, that is transcription from the help of this transcription factor, because this transcription factor is inhibited by some aldosterone receptor inhibitor. Okay, aldosterone receptor inhibitor, then there will be no transcription and no translation, then there will be no protein formation, and that protein will help in the formation of the sodium channel, potassium channel, and sodium potassium ATPase. Okay, then there will be less sodium channel formation, then there will be less sodium reabsorption, and there will be less potassium channel formation, there will be less potassium secretion. Then when there is a less potassium secretion, then there will be less loss of potassium into the urine. Then less potassium excretion into the urine, then there will be savage, or there will be less saving of the potassium, which means less loss and more saving. More saving of the potassium, which means the potassium sparing. There is a potassium will be left from the excretion. Therefore, the potassium sparing diuretics will not lead to the hypokalemia. Okay, this is the note which I want to make you understand. So here is written, note, all diuretic cause hypokalemia and the except potassium sparing diuretics. Okay, potassium sparing diuretics, these are the diuretics. And the order in which they cause hypokalemia, which means the carbonic anhydrous will do maximum hypokalemia, and then thiazide diuretic will cause, after that thiazide diuretics cause hypokalemia, after that loop diuretics, which means the loop cause lowest loss of potassium into the urine. Okay, so if we want to give any diuretics, which we will combine with potassium sparing diuretic. And why we are more conscious about the potassium and all? Because potassium cause many damage to the heart. One of them is flutters and fibrillation. Hypo and hyperkalemia will be fatal to the heart. Okay, so therefore potassium maintenance is more important with respect to the any ions or sodium or all. Okay, and then come to the classification of the diuretics. How we classified these diuretics? These diuretics will be classified on the basis of their efficacy or on the basis of their action. Okay, efficacy. Okay, and efficacy means there will be high efficacy, medium efficacy. Okay, in the physiological way there will be efficacy means efficiency, how much it is efficient, how much it will be doing work, how much it will be losing the ions via the passage of the urine. Okay, so there will be high efficacy, medium efficacy, and weak efficacy class of diuretics. There will be classification. Okay, and then what happen is there will be high efficacy. In the high efficacy, their name are furosemide, bumetamide, ethacranic acid, torsemide, and mercilel. And these all are most of these are ototoxic. Ototoxic means they are toxic to the otolith organ. Otolith organ is present inside the otolith organ. Otolith organ is present inside the ear, which help in the balancing. Okay, and then medium efficacy. And in the medium efficacy there will be benzothiazine, and thiazide like. Okay, or we can more appropriately say thiazide or thiazide like. In the thiazide, the name of the drug are chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, hydroflumethiazide, and bendrofluothiazide. How we need to understand this? Thiazide, which we need to understand thiazide group of drugs. Then chlorothiazide, chlor, which means its prefix is chlorine, which means chlorothiazide. And then one more, we add chlorine plus water. Then chlorine plus water, hydro something pertaining to water, hydrochlorothiazide. And then hydroflumethiazide. Hydro means water, flu, let us suppose there will be fluorine, and met will be methyl. Let us suppose there will be 3 groups inside this drug, hydroflumethiazide and bendrofluothiazide. And the thiazide like are chlorthalidone, metallazone, indapamide, clopamide, and zipamide. Okay, these are the chlorthalidone, metallazone, indapamide, clopamide, and zipamide. Okay, and indapamide is the longest acting drug. And then the weak efficacy group of diuretic. In the weak efficacy, there are carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, which I have already told you, and then the potassium sparing diuretic, which I have already told you, and osmotic diuretics. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitor type of diuretics names are acetazolamide, brinzolamide, dorzolamide. Okay, acetazolamide given as IV. Okay, therefore it will given in cases of emergency. Anything which we do, which we give administered the drug via the route of intravenously, then it will be used in emergency. Okay, brinzolamide, dorzolamide, they are also used in glaucoma. Okay, and then another is methazolamide and dichlorphenamide. These are all ending with the suffix amide. Therefore, they are sulfonamide derivative. Okay, and then potassium sparing. We have two mechanism action for the potassium sparing. First one is aldosterone antagonist, A antagonist, and another one is ENC inhibitor, epithelial sodium channel inhibitor. The name of the aldosterone inhibitor are spironolactone and eplerenone. Okay, the mnemonic will be SEAT, SEAT. The spironolactone and eplerenone are aldosterone antagonist, and ENC, which means epithelial sodium channel inhibitor, are amilorides and triamidrine. Okay, and then osmotic group of diuretic, which I have already told on the previous page. They are mannitol, isosorbide, glycerol, and urea. Okay, isosorbide also used in the angina, and the glycerol and the urea, these are the osmotic diuretics. And then the last point we need to understand, or it is the applied part and physiological significance. They are used as antihypertensive drug. First of all, we need to understand the hypertension and what are the factors which contribute to the hypertension. In the very short way, I will be explaining. Let us suppose there are the two things which help in the maintenance of the BP. Okay, antihypertensive mean which help in the decreasing in BP. Okay, so for the physiology, something a part of the BP physiology is, let us suppose there is a term extracellular fluid volume. Extracellular fluid volume is a volume which is present in our body. Okay, let us suppose there is a blood. Let us suppose it is also extracellular fluid. Okay, in the blood. So in the blood there will be sodium and water. Okay, sodium and water. Why I am talking the sodium and water? Because this is the most important and most abundant or more amount of component present inside our vessels. Okay, let us suppose this is our vessel. Okay, in the vessel this sodium and chloride and sodium and water are running. These are contributing to the extracellular fluid volume. Okay, if this volume is more, sodium and water, that is extracellular fluid volume will be more, then this is the vessel. Then vessel stretching, which means, let us suppose this is the pressure which is applying. Extracellular fluid is applying on the lateral walls, which is the lateral definition of the blood pressure, BP. Okay, which is the lateral pressure. Okay, pressure exerted by the fluid on the walls. Okay, which will be more if the extracellular fluid volume will be more, then sodium and water will be more, and then when it goes inside the vessel, then it will exert more pressure, and okay, and then it will exert more pressure, then it will give rise to the more BP. Okay, if it is occurring during the time of the systole, then it is called as systolic blood pressure. It is occurring during the time of diastole, then it is called as the diastolic blood pressure. Systole is the what is systole? In one way, systole means contraction of the heart, diastole means filling of the heart. Okay, during the time when the heart is contracting, during the time when heart is filling, okay, or relaxing. Okay, so this is the normal BP. Okay, and what if you want to understand further, if it will go to the vessel and it goes stretching, and if it will fill the heart, if this vessel, we know that this is a vessel in vena cava. Okay, vena cava, and blood is coming inside it. Okay, blood is coming inside it, and there will be more filling of the heart, then there will be more pre-stretch to the myocardium. More pre-stretch means the stretch, the load or the stretch on the myocardium before it contract. Okay, more pre-stretch on the myocardium. Okay, according to the Frank-Starling law, more will be the ejection. So more will be the ejection, for therefore more will be the pump, more will the pumping capability of the heart if the more fluid is coming. So if this pumping is occurring during the time of the systole, then it will elevate the systolic blood pressure. Okay, it will elevate the systolic blood pressure. So according to the Frank-Starling law, this is all about the CVS physiology. I am making you understand. This is the additional knowledge. This is the Frank-Starling law. According to the Frank-Starling law, if there is a more pre-stretch to the myocardium, then there will be the more force of contraction of the heart. Okay, this is the Frank-Starling law. There are many ways of the Frank-Starling law, but one of the ways, more will the pre-stretch, more will the force of contraction. Okay, and more will the systolic blood pressure. Or in another way, we can understand there will be more extracellular fluid volume, more sodium and water, more it will fill the vessel, and more stretching on the vessels. Okay, vessel wall, and more will be the blood pressure. Okay, more will be the blood pressure. And what does the diuretics do? Diuretic drugs can cause loss of water and electrolyte through the urine. Water and electrolyte through the urine will be lost. Then water and electrolyte through the urine will be lost. Then water and electrolyte. Suppose water and electrolyte will be sodium and water. Then there will be less water and electrolyte will be low. Less water and electrolyte, then there will be less extracellular fluid volume, less filling into the vessel, less stretching. Okay, less stretching of the vessel. Okay, less stretching of the vessel, then there will be the low BP. Okay, then we may land up into the low BP. Okay, which means the normal BP. If a person is hypertensive, then his or her BP come to the normal. Okay, and another one is it is used in edema.